Our next guest doesn't like the offerings from the GOP candidates or the Obama administration. Joining us now, former Reagan OMB Director David Stockman, who is, there's a lot more to you than the way we've been teasing you this morning, that you just hate the Romney-Ryan budget, and you sound like you're, I don't know, a turncoat Republican that's thrown his lot in with the Democrats. In fact, you think Ron Paul probably has the...
Well, he was the only one that was right about the Fed, and the Fed is the heart of the problem. We have destroyed the capital markets, the money markets. Interest rates mean nothing. Everything is trading off the Fed. Wall Street isn't even home. It's a bunch of computers trading word clouds, emitted by this central bank or that. Now, in that environment, everybody's being given the wrong signal. In other words, the Ryan Romney campaign is about restoring vibrant capitalism. How can you do that when the financial markets are dead? The lifeblood of a capitalist system. That is the problem today.
And the other thing you point out is, why would either side come to the table to deal with long-term entitlement issues when you can borrow at zero?
Yeah, you look at the yield curve this morning. 3-year money, 33 basis points. That's absurd. 1-year money, 11 or 16, whatever it is. All the way out to 5 years, you can fund this debt at 65 basis points. Now, I spent a lot of years in Washington in Congress. I know what it takes to have people fall on the sword, to really reform entitlements, or finally face up to the military-industrial complex, or maybe begin to reform the tax code. They'll never do it if you can keep borrowing free money forever, because the Fed and these lunatics who are running it, and I use that word advisedly, are basically telling the whole world untruths about the cost of money, about the cost of risk, about how you allocate capital.
You wonder why we get bubbles and when you're keeping things at zero, and obviously that's not what any of these yields, that's not where they should be.
Yeah, well, let me ask.
One thing you did say, though, you said that the reason you're mad at the Republicans is because they've abandoned the Republican principles of their forefathers, more or less.
Exactly, and it happened. Everything that Ronald Reagan stood for in the 1980s went down the tubes in September 2008 when they bailed out Wall Street, when they came in with this TARP, which was an abomination, when they were unwilling to let Morgan Stanley go down the tubes, which it should have because of the speculation that it was doing and the, irresponsible, reckless balance sheet that it had.
If you can't fail, you shouldn't succeed, right?
That's exactly right. And so we haven't even addressed any of that. We have simply said there was some great crisis. We don't know where it came from. Maybe it came on an asteroid or meteor from outer space, but it's over, and we're going to keep interest rates at zero for 6 years. Go back to pre-1990. I was around quite a while. No one in 1990 would have thought keeping interest rates at zero for 6 years was anything but lunatic.
The Romney-Ryan budget, I looked at some of the things you don't like about it. Yeah. You hear that Medicare is going to end as we know it, and then the Republicans come back and say, well, wait a second, anyone who's over 55 won't be touched. That's what you don't like about it. It takes 10 years to address Medicare. You want to address it even sooner. And you want to do a lot of cuts that the progressives would not like, but you admit that there's some tax.
Of course.
So they got the wrong guy for their poster child for the left.
I think they do, but here's the thing. We have a $800 billion defense and national security budget. I call that the warfare state. It's absurd that we're spending $800 billion when we have no industrial enemies in the world. Ryan wants to hold it or increase it. All right, $800 billion goes to Social Security. 40 million of the people on it need it. There's 15 million that are affluent, that have many other assets and sources of income. They should be means tested now. Medicare, he's taken a huge hit for Medicare. He doesn't touch it till 2023. Well, why does someone think we're going to get between now and 2023?
It's a third rail, because you can't even say 2023 without getting
what would you cut the defense budget by?
I would cut it by a third. I would radically come in there. I would tell the generals, put your toys away, get out your sharp pencils. We are going to bring this thing down to a level in real terms that Eisenhower in 1960 said we could live with when we were facing a real industrial enemy that actually was able to do some damage.
What else would you cut?
I said I would means test heavily Social Security, Medicare, drastically reduce defense spending.
How would you handle Medicare? Medicare.
You know,
do you like a voucher program? Do you like what's your?
It's too late for that. You need to simply means test it. So if you're affluent, you're going to pay a much higher premium. Everybody needs to pay bigger co-pays, bigger deductibles.
Okay, but that is the equivalent of raising taxes on some people.
Yes, and then we have to raise taxes on everybody. Okay, the Bush tax cuts expire. All of them for everybody. We cannot afford them. We couldn't afford them.
He's not your guy. He's not the guy you thought he was. Okay. He's not. You know, you want him to come in. You were going. We're not worthy. We're not worthy. That's not who he is. And you've written these things about the fantasy of the Romney. If you ever wrote about the Obama budget, it'd be even a nastier piece.
Well, you know, the reason I haven't done that is I assume people can see that. Okay.
Well, you can't assume that. You know what I thought of? You heard what I said. You want to meet all the actresses that are on the left. You want to be a left winger so you can meet Hollywood. That's not it, right?
I'll tell you what. The Obama budget is total fantasy. He is saying we're foursquare for protecting Social Security forever, and Medicare you can't take a dime out of.
Do you want me to throw him off the set? He came under false pretenses. You didn't know he was going to say this stuff, did you?
I happen to agree with him as well.
Well, no, but here's the thing about Obama. To do all of that, and fine, that's what a liberal Democrat wants to do. A pro-big government Democrat. But you can't go out and say we're going to keep taxes low on 98% of the population.
I know, they love those tax cuts. Those Bush tax cuts.
The Bush tax cuts for the 98%.
They love those,
What are progressives thinking? Half of the population doesn't even pay income tax. They're getting protected already. The rest of the population has to pay for the government that all these Democrats and big government, big spenders want. And the problem we have right now is 2 free lunch parties, and it's giving bad signals to everybody. I want to go back to that junk bond rate of 4.95 on a double B. What kind of signal are you giving to the private sector that you can borrow way down deep in the capital structure of a double B credit, a junk credit, for 250 basis points over inflation?
Democrat, you're the private sector. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think look at corporate balance sheets. They've gotten incredibly better over the last number of years, right? So lower rates hasn't led people to borrow money. In that period, it's all been reflective of the same thing. People have been in repair mode. So the government sector's been borrowing money. It's true. Private sector's been shoring up cash as fast as they can. Look, I think the issue with politics to me, I think, is practical, which is that I think when we talk to a lot of companies and we look at markets ourselves, to some degree, you care whether taxes are at one level versus another. Most of all, you want people to stop yelling and just have some predictability. If there's no predictability, you can't invest.
A lot to yell about. How about cronyism, corporate cronyism?
It's terrible, but the fiscal cliff everybody talks about as if it's a one-time event. It's not. It's a permanent event. We have got ourselves buried so deep. In promises and parties dug in. The Republicans are out of their minds.
You listen to David Walker, David? I mean,
he's good. He's good. Okay.
Do you see he totals up our promises? It's not 17. It's not 17 trillion. It's like 60.
I know, but Joe, when you get to this cliff, $500 billion of tax cuts expiring, $100 billion a year of the sequester and so forth. They're not going to solve it through some grand compromise.
What would happen if the Bush tax cuts expired?
The economy would go into recession, which it needs to. And I know that's a very controversial statement.
Our deficit would go away in 10 years.
We could work out of it, and we have to eat our broccoli. We can't just keep stimulating artificially this economy by borrowing from the future. Okay, you can do it for 1 year at the bottom. The news flash is this is month 39 of the recovery. 39 months.
You don't see any hope that the way it's being demagogued on both sides.
Of course not. But what I'm saying is the average cycle since World War II has been 48 months. We're in month 39, and we have all these boys and girls on Wall Street begging the Fed for another injection of sugar.
Right.
Now, this is how sick the system is, and you have to blame it on the Federal Reserve. So if Romney were real about what he's saying about restoring capitalism, he would say, day one, hour one, job one, Bernanke is fired.
He does say that.
I'm clean. Well, he didn't. He's not that.
He said
he's not that clear
him.
about it. But until he says we're going to clean house at the Fed, because that's where this crisis came from in 2008. That's why we're still buried. We're crushing savers. We're giving speculators and traders free overnight money. We're telling you, till 214, you get free.
You weren't expecting this. Well, I'm sorry, but
I think he's got some
You're
very
right.
interesting views. I'm listening very closely.
But isn't it true that when you tell traders that till 214 the overnight rate's going to be zero, you go out and you buy anything with a yield, anything with a duration, because the Fed isn't going to surprise you. Now, I was there.
A little bit of consistency, though.
Well, look, I was there when Volcker was Fed chairman. There wasn't a guy on Wall Street who wanted to take anything for granted when he was chairman, because he was going to do what he thought was right. He wasn't going to simply placate the boys and girls who want a little more.
David, it was great. Thank you.